Good morning. It's Friday, July 11th. I'm Phil Streible, Chief Market Strategist at Blue Line Futures. So it's shaping up to be a very busy Friday morning. We have September silver hitting a 52-week high, $38.45 an ounce. It's almost a 1% increase from the previous close. And that previous high that we had taken out technically was on June 18th. So do you have to wait for the cash open to trade the silver market? Why not have a futures trading account? And what will the Sunday night bring to us? So can silver hit $40 an ounce? And as of this recording, looking at Monday's tactical resistance point, which I post on the Metals Edge email that goes out to our clients, sits at about $39.99 as tactical resistance 3. So can the bears hold, or will they capitulate once we get to that $40 level? That's the big question there. So at the same time, we're seeing Bitcoin futures really taking off as well here, hitting that all-time high as a Friday morning just above that 19,500 on the futures contract, on the July futures contract. And the cryptocurrency's market cap now exceeds about $2.3 trillion. This surpasses tech giants like Alphabet, Meta, and notably, it also overtakes the silver market. So Bitcoin is more valuable from a cap standpoint than the silver market. So looking at a data check here, because we do have outside markets making some very big moves overnight. We do have the S&P 500 and NASDAQ lower by about a little bit over 0.5% as of 5:30 a.m. Central Time. We do have the dollar index strengthening against all of its major peers except the Swiss franc and except the Australian dollar. So you've got resistance point 1 on the dollar index sitting at 97.55 and then 97.84. So the 10-year treasury yield also advancing about 4 basis points, trading at its first resistance point at 439, and then the second resistance point would be 4.43. So why are these markets making these big moves? Well, futures are declining as he triggers further trade war anxiety here, escalating his tariff threats. So Trump threatened a 35% tariff on some Canadian goods, and that's the increase from the current 25% tariff that's imposed on all U.S. imports from Canada that aren't shipped under the terms of the U.S., Mexico, and Canada agreement. So Trump also said on NBC News that he's eyeing blanket tariffs of 15 to 20% across most trading partners. So the anxiety has really hitting the S&P 500. So traders, they'd really been desensitized to the tariff developments here, with the S&P 500 hitting a record high here and getting close to it here yesterday. But we're starting to see some of the anxiety come back in the markets, and that anxiety is being fueled by the end of the week because no telling what the weekend is going to bring us. So you've got the July VIX up about 4.5% at 1761. I'm going to be eyeing the August VIX for a possible entry for some of the clients that we're working with here. Now, geopolitical wise here, Trump said that he also plans to make a major statement on Russia as the U.S. prepares to send more weapons to Ukraine via purchases from NATO allies. So he said, I think I'll have a major statement to make on Russia on Monday, he told NBC News. And then he said in the interview, he reiterated criticism of Vladimir Putin and Russia's continued attacks over Ukraine. So we're going to also want to keep an eye on oil. We'll want to keep an eye on platinum, palladium, things that Russia is involved with. We're looking at the gold market because they were the first central bank that actively went after, really because of the restrictions they had on the financial payment system, taking them off of SWIFT, things like that. They had to go out and they had to sell off many of their foreign currencies. And what they did was they parked that into gold. And that's what really started to spark the rally as far as central bank purchases are concerned. Now, looking at economic data, nothing really coming out today. We've got the federal budget balance at 1 p.m. Central Time. Central bankers will have Fed's Goolsbee. And then you look at some of the ETF flows, the exchange-traded funds. They continue to add to the gold holdings, but only in a very minimal amount, still sitting at about 9.2%. Where the action is taking place, the ETFs added another 1 million ounces of silver to their holdings here, and another big jump to 8.4%. And that's how you got silver up $1.15. Many of the clients that I'm working with have been eyeing the technical breakout, adding to any kind of sell-off that we've seen down to support levels, and then also adding an option overlay going out to December for a bigger wave higher in those markets. So they're being handsomely rewarded here in this overnight session. In conjunction with that, if you get the chart back, we've been playing also the range on Bitcoin while adding another option overlay on that particular market as well. Why didn't we have an option overlay on the copper market in preparation for a breakout? Well, the micro copper contract doesn't offer options, so that wasn't available to us in order to implement that. We have all the agricultural markets under a bit of pressure. The wheat market is the one that's starting to consolidate sideways and is poking its head up. It has been kind of the leader of the pack, and it's starting to come on my radar. Now, nothing that I say on this particular means of channel here is any kind of investment advice going out to the public. If you have any questions on futures option trading, of course, give me a call. Shoot an email to info@BlueLineFutures, and I have many associates also that can help you out as well, setting up a trading account and getting things going. We also had another major announcement that was on CNBC that we're starting to add a metals alpha portfolio that's going to be a metals and mining portfolio that we're going to start offering out to people. So you're going to want to get some more details on that as well. We'll start putting that out. So it's going to own no more than 10 names here in our highest conviction ideas in the metals space. It could raise up to 50% cash and no more under extraordinary circumstances. So it leans heavy into gold mining, but it can also own exposure to gold, copper, and others. And it's modeled similarly to our successful concentrated alpha portfolio, which has capitalized heavily on that tech bull market since the 2022 bottom. Now, what am I personally going to be doing looking out to next week? Well, next week, we're going to have the CPI data coming out here. And the CPI most likely will show that we're going to see some continued acceleration like what we saw last month here. And then we're also going to see that year-over-year change as well. And what that's going to do is it should raise yields a bit more, and that's why yields are hovering right near these kind of breakout points. Now, I believe that yields are just bouncing to a lower high technically. But the question is how will some of these markets react? And that's why many of you that are working closely with me are trimming off just a little bit of that exposure here and also reducing just a bit of gold exposure because of the higher yields. Something to note here is that copper futures are down about 1.8% here, 548 here last, platinum slightly lower, palladium up at 1233. So again, a really busy day with a number of interviews here lined up on different media outlets. So got any questions, give us a call. And remember that futures and option trading does involve risk of loss and it may not be suitable to all investors. Good luck, good trading.